Good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted to have you here to celebrate the opening of Anne-Karin Furunes' Illuminating Nordic Archives. My name is Carson McCulley. I am the museum's assistant programs manager, and I have the pleasure of introducing today's artist in conversation. Today, we are joined by the artist Anne-Karin Furunes in conversation with National Nordic Museum's chief curator, Leslie Anderson. Anne-Karin Furunes is a leading artist whose work embraces both painting and public commissions. Since 1992, Furunes has developed a signature technique which involves perforating canvas or metal to mimic the halftone printing process, most popularly used in periodicals. Furunes does not employ a computer to create the image, but composes it manually. Nonetheless, her works address the complex coordination of light, material, and space in contemporary photography, whether digital or analog. Furunes' process centers on archival photographs that she finds, preserves, and edits. With a keen eye for human figures, she is known for her striking and thought-provoking black and white portraits, tackling, among other things, climate change and the painful history of eugenics in Scandinavia. Furunes focuses her work on the human, individual consequences of these social and environmental calamities. The Sami people, indigenous inhabitants of Fennoscandia, are frequent subjects, as their way of life is particularly threatened by the disasters the artist considers. Furunes' method of removing material in order to reveal an image complements a research-based practice that often focuses on forgotten histories and people, injecting a tangible human element and contemporary relevance into archival photographs. By bringing the images of the forgotten into light, her process as an artist is itself a metaphor. Trained as an artist and architect, Furunes received her degree from the Trondheim Academy of Fine Art in Norway. Furunes lives and works in Stjørdal, Norway. Leslie Anderson is chief curator at the National Nordic Museum. Since 2019, she has overseen the museum's collections, exhibitions, and programming functions. Leslie has developed major exhibitions with Sweden's National Museum and Finland's National Gallery, commissioned new work from Jonsi, vocalist for the band Sigur Rós, and organized her first art exhibition at a U.S. museum, as well as the first ever exhibition of his Fishersund art collective. And she co-curated Nordic Utopia, African Americans in the 20th Century with Etheline Whitmire. From 2015 until 2019, Leslie was curator of European, American, and regional art at the Utah Museum of Fine Arts, University of Utah, and she held positions at the Indianapolis Museum of Art and Statens Museum for Kunst before that. She has curated dozens of exhibitions, produced hundreds of programs, and directly stewarded 1,000+ acquisitions of art and artifacts, and published extensively on European and American art from the 18th century to the present day. Over 6 years, she taught students in undergraduate art history courses at Brooklyn College, Parsons School of Design, and Indianapolis University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, among other institutions. For her curatorial work, she has received the Association of Art Museums Curators Award for Excellence in Exhibition, first place, and the Utah Museums Association Award for Excellence in Exhibition. She has been the American Scandinavian Foundation Fellow and a Fulbright Scholar. In 2023, the University of Florida Alumni Association selected Leslie as one of the 40 Gators under 40. She received graduate degrees in art history from the University of Florida and the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, and this May, she will earn an MBA from Emory University. Currently, Leslie is serving a second term as a mayoral-appointed Seattle Arts Commissioner, and she is a member of the Executive Council of the Society for the Advancement of Scandinavian Studies. Please join me in welcoming Anne-Karin Furunes and Leslie Anderson.
Thank you, Carson, for that lovely welcome. It's so great to be here with you, Anne-Karin, and with all of you on this wonderfully sunny day, so thank you for spending this time with us. I'd like to get started by talking about your journey to date as an artist. Where did you begin? And talk to us about the road that led you here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I'm so pleased to be here. And I want to start with my journey into art. Actually, I started to study architecture because in my family, to be an artist is nothing. So I had to do something where I could earn my money, and yeah. So I started with architecture, but during the time I was studying, I felt that architecture was very much about having the right taste and doing the functional tasks. For me, it became more and more clear that it was art I would like to work with. So I studied. I actually did my architecture education, but I'm very pleased that I'm working with art, because for me it was important that in art you have the freedom to work with things that you're interested in, and you have a totally different possibility to speak about things that you feel is necessary.
So we're first going to talk about the raw source material for your work in the archives, because that's how we've organized the exhibition, is really thinking about your inspiration in the archives. So we share this passion for archival research. For me, the archives have been the setting for my art history sleuthing. It's where I search for the missing puzzle pieces, the answers to art historical questions that keep me awake. And I'm really interested in what sparked that interest for you.
Yeah, I was finished as an artist in 1991, and then I got, or I was not finished, I was working, I came home to Stjørdal and worked, took my last year in Trondheim, which is very close to my home, and then I got hold on material, archival, or old photographic albums that I could look into. And what drew my interest was especially those people that I didn't know, that was unknown to us. So I had a desire to try to translate these portraits that meant so much and spoke to me into physical works in the space. So later I think that was the starting point why I was interested in photographic images. Later I understood that going into different archives was something, the same interest as you have, that I was really interested in the stories that was not really told. Because the history that we are presented are usually told by the winning side. But there are so many complex stories that are hidden in the deep, dark archives. And I think they are what really draw my interests.
Could you expand a bit on how you select subject matter for a series?
When I've been looking into archives, I've been digging into I have had ideas what I'm searching for, but usually I find something totally different. It's usually the stories or the material that speaks to me that has something else. And what I really find interesting is that I usually meet people working in the archives with a lot of knowledge. And those people have been guiding me into material that is in an old shoebox or in something that is not really part of the archival categories.
So it's far from a solitary project then. You've found support among archivists, librarians, scholars, and scientists with your work in Svalbard. Exactly.
And for example, when I was working with the Polar Institute up in Tromsø, there was one person, Ann-Kristin Balto, was very important for me. She guided me into this sea of archive photographic material. So, and she showed me different things, but I got really interested in how the Sami people that was part of the polar expedition was never mentioned as one of the heroes in that expeditions, but they were actually like Per Savio was one of them, and he was really the one that saved the expedition because of the knowledge that the Sami people have about being in the snow and ice landscape. He was part of the expedition that was Borchgrevink in Antarctic. And and she also introduced me to Geirvin Gabrielsen's material of the Svalbard glaciers photos. He has been a researcher that has been traveling there for 30 years, and he has experienced what is actually happening up there in north with the coughing glaciers, with the plastic in the birds and so on. So I got to know him, and also he had some of the photos from the exhibition is taken by him. I have translated it into my work, but I had the possibility to get to know him. And we were also invited to go to New Ålesund and Svalbard together with him last summer. And Kalle Eriksson, my husband, he was joining me. He's an artist as well, and he's actually always part of the discussion around the work I'm doing.
So how deep does your investigation go into individual images that serve as source material? Do you seek background information on an individual portrayed or in the environmental history of a landscape depicted?
I usually go for, like, when I'm looking into the archives, there is usually I'm digging into material that speak to me, and because there is individual people that are, it's the faces, there is something that is drawing my interest into that material. I think that I have been working with different themes, like the deported Jews, different the Finnish War Archive, and so on. And what is usually interesting, I find, is that in those archives, the people are mostly representing some part of the history, but they are not named with names. They are not individuals. They are just representing a story. But for me, what really interests me is when I find a portrait or a picture that is speaking to me. So amongst 10,000 of photographs, I might be interested in exactly that one. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I'm also digging into the story and what kind of context, of course, which is exactly because of the complex history. I think the archives is something that is super important for all of us, because as with memory, it is reconstructed every time you think about it. And I think that archives are complex history, but it will always be important to see it through the time we are in now. So different things are important in different times. But it's so important to have the possibility to remember what has happened. Mm-hmm.
How has your investigation into Nordic archival collections challenged your assumptions about the region and its history?
I think, of course, it has challenged. In Norway, we have always been very proud of being at the right side of the war, Second World War. But what I found in the archives was also how we collaborated with the Nazis to deport Jewish people. So I have been always like looking at the complexity of what is actually the real story and how we look at it afterwards. Mm.
We talked a bit about the images at the entrance to the gallery, how they're of named individuals, and those derive from the archival materials collected part of the Sophus Tromholt archival materials at the University of Bergen. And Sophus Tromholt went to Kautokeino as part of the International Polar Year to depict the Aurora Borealis. That didn't work so well with dry plate photography, but instead focused on portraiture, focused on the built environment as well as the natural landscape. And then as you move further into the exhibition, there's a group of images that come from the State Institute for Racial Biology, and those works are unnamed. Could you talk a little bit about that and working through that archival material?
Yeah, I came across this archive when I was invited by the Swedish state to make a kind of celebration about Linné and his 300 years since he was born in 2005. And I was then looking at those pictures, but then I came across the racial biology, the eugenic program that Herman Lundborg started before this, in 20s, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was, actually the material was thrown to a container during the Second World War because they didn't want to talk about it then, but luckily somebody managed to get it back into the library so that we can keep the history. But Herman Lundborg, he started the state's racial biology program, and it was the first of its kind, but many countries had the same program. And for me, as that has studied architecture, I thought it was interesting to see the dark side of the modernism that wanted people to have good houses and light and live better. This was the part where they wanted to sterilize people that didn't have the good genes. And in Sweden, I think it was 60,000 that was sterilized because of that program. When I came across the material, I got really taken by the photos of the people. And I was questioning myself, could I really do something with this? Because it was a violent thing to photograph them and register them and to put them into different categories. And some of the pictures are really hard to see. They were naked, and it was really hard to see them, some of them. But I chose, and I was like asking if I really could do it, work on these photographs. But I chose to use those photos where the people are looking back with a kind of confronting face and questioning, what are you doing? And I hope they agree that I could use those as a background for my paintings.
And I think too, in our conversations, your intent is really to evoke the process of remembering individuals who have been forgotten, and your technique achieves that through like the kind of porous, material nature of these canvases.
Yeah, I was very much interested in how memory functions. When you wake up in the morning, you maybe think about a song or you think about a story that you have and you try to grasp it and it evaporates. And I wanted this work and images to have this kind of immateriality, or that you actually have to rebuild it yourself. So I really want the viewer to have the possibility to find your position towards the painting and rebuild it in your head. Actually, my first exhibition ever was named It's All in Your Head. And so Exactly. It was the technique with the holes.
Are there archival collections that you want to mine further, or stories that you want to bring to light through your work?
Yeah, I'm always curious about archives, and I have already spoken a little bit with you about archives here, but I think there is. I'm coming back to some of the archives also, and suddenly, as an artist, you have the possibility to leave it when you think that that's finished. So I'm sure it's going to develop.
So I think that's a nice segue to the next question, which is how do you determine the size and scope of a series?
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, the idea about I think the background as an architect is really important because I really want the images to be a kind of physical encounter with the viewer. So to make the work big and so that you are actually immersed into it is very important. Yeah.
How did your technique develop?
Yeah, that's in the very beginning, when I was starting at the Art Academy with this technique, I was standing together with painters that was like working with, they were throwing paint on the canvases and they were so self-confident. And I was insecure standing in front of the white canvases, and I was I actually started to destroy the canvas. I started to cut in it and just to make myself more familiar with the white canvas. But this destructive way of working with it became a way of building new images. And I think I wanted to have the work, have the painting to communicate with the real space. So that's why I wanted the holes to be part of the image.
So that's interesting because when we think about painting, we think about an additive process. We're applying paint to canvas, and then you explore the subtractive process. And with the later work, even additional that additive process with the cyan, magenta, and yellow dots that mimic the halftone process. So would you talk a little bit more about kind of balancing the subtractive and the additive process in your paintings?
Yeah, I think in many ways it can look like a printing technique or pointillism or whatever. But for me, the holes that I make, I usually say that I'm drawing with light or holes. And I connected with the printing technique, which is a kind of way of making many copies of one image. I'm actually working with, each of my works are unique, and I'm doing each hole by hand. And I'm putting the canvas across the floor, and I'm sitting, making each hole with 30 different punch holders, and drawing and letting, because my main material is maybe the light and the space.
So I think many of us are asking ourselves, how long does it take you to complete one painting?
I don't think you want to know. It's a long time. And sometimes when you are working for months with one work, I suddenly make one hole that is too big, and I ask Kalle, is this nice? And he says, there is something strange there. And yeah, then I have to start again.
And we also talked about where in the image you begin, and you mentioned with portraits, you begin with the eyes.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the eyes, and I start very often with the eyes. And to bring, like, to build up, but it has to be the whole image before I know if there is enough light behind the painting, if it actually functions. And sometimes I can do the eyes, I can do the whole face, but there is not enough light coming through, and then I have to maybe make bigger holes in the background to get enough. So it's the whole picture that is deciding how I work. I put the painting against the wall, and maybe I need some more light in the eyes, bringing a bigger hole in some of the parts. Yeah.
I think after working with you and maybe the team will attest in installing that light is on your palette as well. So you could talk a little bit more about the role that artificial or natural light plays in your work, and maybe how you have your view on its display has changed over time. For instance, when your work was displayed at Palazzo Fortuny, for example.
Yeah, in 2014, I was able to work with Palazzo Fortuny space in Italy, and we came there and we started to work, and it was very difficult to get the paintings to function in that space because the walls were not white walls, it was walls with history and a lot of colors and so on. So Daniela Ferretti, that was the main curator there, she was helping me to bring the paintings in front of the windows. And this was very important and interesting for me because it's not actually the technique or the holes or the canvas, it is the light that is the main material I'm working with. And to bring these paintings in front of the window made it so that the light during the day was changing throughout the whole space. So one painting was very clear in the morning, but then it closed down and the sun went to the other. So every time when you came, it was a different space and different exhibition in a way. So for me, it has been always very interesting to come into new situation and to experience how the work actually are totally depending on the context and the light and the situation. So this has also been a learning process in this exhibition because I usually always show my works in white space, but Leslie was insisting on the gray walls, and I have to say that it has been a learning process, and I think this will also impact how I'm working with the exhibition in the future, because with light behind the image and so on, it is a new experience, and I think it's really healthy that somebody is sparking you out of the safe space that you are in and bringing you further.
So for some context there, the idea is that we want the works to sing as loudly as they can. So not to distract with wall color, but to allow the polished concrete floors to harmonize with the wall and to just dissolve. And all you see is the work in the space.
I'm happy that it's like that.
Okay, so what have been the opportunities and the challenges with working in this particular scale, large scale, and format?
Of course, I'm quite small, and to work with these big canvases is quite challenging. And but luckily, Carl is always with me with this process. So, but for me, it has been. I mean, it's like sometimes when I'm working on the canvas, I'm sitting like 12 hours making each hole, and I can almost not raise up because I look like the. So it's a physical challenge, I think, to be working with them. but I'm always doing it because I'm very curious to see the next work.
Yeah.
That drives me further.
So, speaking of the next work, what is next for you?
In the moment, I'm working with a very... sometimes I get really angry at myself because as an artist, you always do something that you cannot do, that you are not familiar with. And this time I'm working with a commission work, and the material I've chosen is stone and metal, like bronze. So this will be a commission art in Bergen, in the center of the city, and that's a huge work, and it's really challenging, but I'm sure we will end up somewhere.
I'm confident of that. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to you to ask questions. There is a microphone that will be passed. So if you could just raise your hand high. Okay, back there.
Is there no photographic process at all in the pieces? Is there no photographic process at all to make these pieces?
No, there is no photographic material in the pieces. It's only the holes. It's translated to holes. Like when you look at the old papers, it was always this repro technique or half-tone technique. Mm-hmm. So it's inspired of that, but there is no... Very often I meet people and they say, yeah, but where is the photo? Is it behind? But it's actually the holes that make it photographic when you are getting far enough away from it.
So the archival photo that you're working from, are you working from the original? Are you copying it and blowing it up? What is that?
Yeah, I'm drawing from, in a way, I draw with holes. So I'm translating the original photograph into holes or half-tone technique, as mentioned here before. So, and my background when I started as an artist, I was drawing a lot. I was teaching architects how to draw and to fulfill their ideas with drawings, and to be able to, so drawing has always been a way to work with. From black to white and the gray scale in between is my way of making an illusion of the 3D image. So I guess that, and spending like 30 years doing this, I'm able to tell what kind of size you have on your belt, what hole you have on your belt, because it's my material, it's my method. So it's very. I believe that as an artist, we are usually having this tacit knowledge. You develop a kind of working method, and for me, it's working with holes, drawing with holes.
One of the things I'm very interested in is what happens, what the difference is between an image that sits on the wall as a photograph or a painting or a drawing, and when something becomes a thing. And you play with that image, but it's become a thing that if you look at it very closely, very close up, it's no longer an image that makes that brings a memory of a person or whatever. So it's an interesting thing you do there to me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of describing it, I think. For me, it is actually to work with the immaterial. The image is taken away. It's no longer there. It's the empty holes. So is it a picture there or isn't it? And it deals with memory also. So you have to reconstruct it yourself. And sometimes I think it's very interesting with images, how people are, like with these black paintings that I'm doing, people ask me, oh, where is the image of the red-haired woman? And I say, red hair? It's no red in my images. But the interesting thing with that question is that people are projecting things into what you see. So what is not there is rebuilt by the individual viewer. And you might think that it looks like the aunt that you didn't like, so you don't like the image. Or, yeah, so we all meet it in different ways, and I find it really interesting to speak with people what they actually see.
I saw a question here in the front row, so the mic is coming to you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you lay down by hand a map of the image, photographic image, before you start making the holes? Do you have a map somewhere, or do you just launch into making holes?
No, I do a lot of planning before I put up a grid. Every hole is in a kind of systematic grid. So if you look at it, it's only the size that build the image. So I draw behind, and I'm sitting on the floor, making each hole by hand and putting it up against. Also, I make the first image, and then I'm putting it against the wall, and I find out that I have to emphasize something. Yeah, so it's a long back and forth process.
Between a grid and the holes that you're making?
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a conversation.
It's a conversation with the material and how much material I have to take away to make it.
I'm looking at a picture of your picture, and it's hard to tell. I can't quite get what you do. It's beautiful, but are you starting with a black background and then making, okay, because that helps. And on your colored ones, you have yellow and pink, and are you printing that on the background, or is each one stamped? Each color is, how do you do that?
Yeah. In the beginning, when I started, I used to make holes in white canvas, and then it's the hole that makes the gray shade. But with the black one, the contrast is the white points. With the cyan, magenta, and yellow, I make a paper, and I cut out. I make holes in the paper and make a kind of shablon, or what is it called in English? Yeah. So and then I print. I make each hole each color painting through the shablon. Is there another good word for shablon? Template, yeah, template, thank you. The jet lag makes my English even worse.
Yes, I was curious to know what you do with the discarded holes. Well, only because sometimes they create art as well, so I just thought, well, maybe you go further with it.
Yeah. Actually, once I was doing an installation in Venice where I was binding holes, but they were big. On a facade, it was a face. So I was binding the holes together, and that was making an image as well. So I have done it the other way around. But with the holes, yeah, that's funny, because between the house and our studio, when you walk there, you see all these holes that has been in my hair and my body. So there is a path between the holes, eating dinner, going back to the studio. So they are there, but also I try to vacuum clean them.
There's a hand, maybe 5 rows back.
Hi. Piggybacking off of some of these questions, what does your hole puncher look like? Is it a drill, multiple drill bits, or is it like a little paper from elementary school I think of, or?
It's a metal pinch holder with a hole in, and I use a hammer to go through. So on the ground I have this kind of material, this kind of linoleum material underneath, so that the iron doesn't get unsharp, and I punch through the canvas with that. And yeah, there is like 30 different sizes, 0.5 millimeter each size.
When you began with scissors, though.
I started with scissors. It was not very successful, but it was the beginning.
Okay, Carson, there's a hand in the first row.
It reminds me a bit of pinhole cameras. Would you speak about any interest or informative part of a pinhole camera that may be in the work?
I've been working with pinhole camera as a student. I'm very interested in it. And also this magical thing that through that holes, the world comes upside down. And I think it's beautiful and interesting. And yeah, I think photographic images are magic. And I think it's magic that you have the possibility to take a picture of a person that was living 100 years ago, and you feel that they are present. There is something that keep you holding your fast with their eyes, and I think that's interesting. Pinhole camera often has to be it's more unsharp often, but I'm very interested in that as well.
There's a hand in the second row on this side.
I was curious if you could speak a little bit about the interaction between actually being physically in Svalbard versus the archival images.
Yeah, actually to be in Svalbard and to experience the situation there was mind-blowing. It was something that your body reacts on being at that place. You feel that you're a guest in the nature. You don't feel that you're managing being in a cultivated landscape is something totally different. So Kalle was having the rifle. You were always aware that it could be an ice bear or a polar bear nearby. And but also the situation when you understood how much the ice has melted during the last 50 years. It tells you something, and it also to understand, to get to know all these researchers that were actually writing down what was actually happening there. It was something that I think it changed me, and it was something that I think it was very important to make these images. And, you know, just to be in that landscape and to hear when something is cracking, when the ice is cracking and the glacier is coughing, it's so much force and energy in the situation. And, yeah, it was, you feel very small, even smaller than I am here.
Yeah, the sublimity of nature is something that you capture so well through size in your work. And one name we haven't mentioned is Hannah Resvoll Holmsen,
Yes.
who is a photographer of several, whose material was the inspiration for several works in the third section of the exhibition. So she was a Norwegian botanist who traveled to Svalbard with the Prince of Monaco in 1907 and 8 and captured among the first color photographs of the region. So when you went on the trip, did you feel a kinship with her?
Yeah, because we were also visiting some of the places that Hanna Resvold Holmsen went to. She was actually. I said that I'm usually working with anonymous portraits, but I also sometimes emphasizes, like Hanna Resvold Holmsen, that has been forgotten as one of the polar heroes. She was doing a lot for the climate, and she was fighting against violencing the landscape with putting the water into tubes and things like that. She was really, and she went there, and with her Ektachrome, she took color photos, and she had her rifle with her, and she was staying there alone. As a woman botanist at that time, it was spectacular. So I really admire her work and her way of looking at the nature, because some of the works that you see in there are based on her photographic material. And it's a researcher's way of looking at nature. It's not beautiful landscape. It's like looking at the moss or so she has a researcher's view on things, which I think is very interesting from that time of when she was living. So yeah, and it was very inspiring to be in those places that she was when she was staying over alone in a tent. Yeah. But she was also taken by the nature there, and she made this flora about Svalbard flowers. So she was really studying and marking this.
Hi, thank you. Is there other artists and things that you drew your inspiration from, where you saw and went, wow, I could take that concept, and that's how you created your concept of with the holes and the light? Or was it just photography that really inspired you?
It's interesting. I think I'm very much inspired of other artists, but mainly, maybe not their technique, but like Felix González Torres is one that I'm very interested in. The way that he actually make work that is necessary for him. He did. He's not longer with us, but he was really working with something that interested him so much. And what I like with it is that he also made a political project without speaking as a politician, but through his personal interest in what he was doing. So I think, I guess that artists that do things that are necessary for them, the human subjective voice trying to say something about the world we are in, that's what inspires me. And yeah, and photography material, yeah.
I want to thank you, Anne-Karin, not only for being with us here today, but for the great collaboration.
Thank you, the same. And thank you for all these wonderful questions. That was nice. Thank you.